At 95, Clint Eastwood finally tells the truth about Rob Reiner. Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, California, during the Great Depression. His early years were marked by frequent moves as his family followed work opportunities across California, a transient upbringing that instilled in him both self-reliance and emotional reserve. Eastwood was a quiet, introspective child, more comfortable observing than speaking, traits that would later define his on-screen persona. Music played an early role in his life, particularly jazz and piano, which nurtured a lifelong appreciation for rhythm, mood, and understatement, elements that would later influence his filmmaking style. After graduating from high school, Eastwood worked a variety of jobs, including lifeguard, lumberjack, and gas station attendant. These experiences grounded him in working-class realities and gave him a deep respect for ordinary labor and resilience. His path to acting was neither immediate nor assured. It emerged gradually, almost accidentally, after he was discharged from the U.S. Army and began exploring opportunities in Hollywood. Eastwood's early acting career was defined by rejection and uncertainty. Signed by Universal Pictures in the mid-1950s, he was dismissed after bit parts failed to impress studio executives who criticized his looks, voice, and perceived lack of charisma. Rather than defeat him, these setbacks hardened his resolve. He continued studying acting, taking small roles, and patiently waiting for an opportunity that would allow him to grow rather than conform. That opportunity came in 1959 with the television series Rawhide. Cast as Rowdy Yates, Eastwood gained steady work and visibility over 8 seasons. Though the role provided financial stability and recognition, he felt creatively constrained and sought more complex material. His willingness to take a major risk, leaving American television to work in Italian cinema, would change his life and the history of film. In the mid-1960s, Eastwood accepted a modestly paid role in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. These films revolutionized the Western genre and introduced Eastwood's iconic Man with No Name character, a laconic, morally ambiguous anti-hero whose minimal dialogue and piercing gaze conveyed volumes. Eastwood's performance redefined masculinity on screen. He was neither flamboyant nor verbose. Instead, his power lay in restraint, presence, and implication. The success of these films made him an international star and forever altered the tone and aesthetics of Western cinema. More importantly, they gave Eastwood control over his career choices, creative direction, and professional independence. Returning to Hollywood in the late 1960s and 1970s, Eastwood became one of the industry's most bankable stars. Films such as Dirty Harry cemented his image as a tough, uncompromising enforcer of justice. The character of Harry Callahan sparked intense debate, praised by some as a reflection of public frustration with crime, and criticized by others as emblematic of authoritarianism. Eastwood, however, consistently resisted simplistic interpretations, insisting that his characters reflected moral complexity rather than ideology. Throughout this period, Eastwood demonstrated remarkable versatility, appearing in westerns, action films, thrillers, romantic dramas, and comedies. Movies like Play Misty for Me, High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Escape from Alcatraz showcased his range and growing confidence behind the camera. He was not merely acting, he was learning, experimenting, and quietly preparing for his most significant transformation. As a director, Clint Eastwood developed a distinctive style characterized by economy, emotional restraint, and deep respect for actors. He favored minimal takes, natural lighting, and understated storytelling, allowing performances to breathe and stories to unfold without excess. His films often explored themes of aging, regret, redemption, violence, and moral consequence, subjects rarely treated with such nuance in mainstream cinema. His directorial achievements reached a pinnacle with Unforgiven, 1992, a revisionist Western that dismantled the myths of heroism and violence that had defined the genre. The film earned Eastwood Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture, firmly establishing him as one of the great filmmakers of his generation. He followed this triumph with an extraordinary run of critically acclaimed films, including Mystic River, Million Dollar Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, Changeling, and American Sniper. His acclaim extends far beyond Hollywood. Eastwood has been honored with 3 César Awards, one of Europe's most prestigious film distinctions, reflecting the deep respect he commands within the international cinematic community. In recognition of his profound influence on American film culture, he was also awarded the American Film Institute's Life Achievement Award, a tribute reserved for artists whose work has fundamentally shaped the identity and evolution of cinema in the United States. In 2000, Eastwood's global stature was cemented when the Venice Film Festival bestowed upon him the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement, one of the most revered honors in international film. This award celebrated not just individual films, but an entire body of work marked by moral complexity, emotional restraint, and a distinctive directorial voice that has remained powerful well into his later years. France, a nation renowned for its deep reverence for film as an art form, has twice honored Eastwood with its highest civilian distinctions. In 1994, he was named a commander of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres, recognizing his exceptional contribution to the arts and his influence on cultural life worldwide. More than a decade later, in 2007, he received the Legion of Honor, France's most prestigious decoration, placing him among an elite group of global figures whose achievements transcend borders and generations. Together, these accolades paint the portrait of an artist whose influence is not confined to any single country or era, but whose legacy continues to inspire and define cinema on a truly global scale. Clint Eastwood's marriage to Margaret Maggie Neville Johnson was the longest and, in many ways, the most complex romantic chapter of his life. The two met in 1953 when Eastwood was still a struggling young man with no clear path to stardom. At the time, he was working a variety of jobs, including as a lifeguard and laborer, while pursuing acting opportunities with little success. Maggie Johnson, poised, intelligent, and grounded, represented stability during a period when Eastwood's future was uncertain. They married on December 19, 1953, beginning a union that would last more than 3 decades. In the early years of their marriage, Eastwood's career was slow to develop, and financial insecurity was a constant concern. Maggie played a crucial role during this phase, providing emotional support as Eastwood navigated repeated professional setbacks. When he finally achieved breakthrough success with the television series Rawhide, 1959 to 1965, their lives changed dramatically. Fame brought wealth, visibility, and opportunity, but it also introduced strains that would test the marriage for years. As Eastwood's star rose through his iconic roles in Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy, and later as Inspector Harry Callahan in the Dirty Harry films, his demanding work schedule and increasing independence altered the dynamic of their relationship. Maggie largely remained outside the Hollywood spotlight, preferring privacy and a quieter domestic life. This contrast between Eastwood's public persona and Maggie's reserved nature became more pronounced over time. The marriage was marked by long periods of separation and well-documented infidelities, which Eastwood later acknowledged candidly. Despite these difficulties, the couple remained legally married for decades, an arrangement that reflected both emotional complexity and a mutual sense of responsibility. Maggie and Clint had 2 children together: Kyle Eastwood, born 1968, who became a successful jazz musician, and Allison Eastwood, born 1972, who pursued careers in acting and filmmaking. Maggie's devotion to her children and her efforts to maintain a sense of family continuity were central to her role during this period. In 1978, after 25 years of marriage, Maggie and Clint formally separated, though their divorce would not be finalized until 1984. The lengthy gap between separation and divorce underscored the deeply intertwined nature of their lives and finances. When the divorce was finalized, it was one of the most expensive settlements in Hollywood at the time, reflecting Eastwood's immense success and Maggie's long-standing role as his wife during his rise to fame. Despite the eventual end of their marriage, Maggie Johnson remains a foundational figure in Clint Eastwood's personal history. She was present before the fame, endured the pressures that came with it, and raised their children largely away from Hollywood's excesses. Their relationship, though imperfect, shaped Eastwood's understanding of family, responsibility, and the personal cost of ambition. At 95, Clint Eastwood speaks with a clarity that comes only from having lived a full creative life, unburdened by the need to please. Looking back across more than 7 decades in Hollywood, Eastwood reflects not only on his own career, but on the changing tone of the industry and the people who have come to symbolize those shifts. When asked about Rob Reiner, Eastwood does not speak with bitterness or hostility. Instead, his comments are measured, philosophical, and rooted in a belief that Hollywood has drifted away from its original purpose, telling stories that unite rather than divide. "I've never had a problem with Rob as a filmmaker," Eastwood says. "He's talented. You don't make the movies he's made without understanding character and timing." Eastwood acknowledges Reiner's achievements, particularly his early work, which emphasized humor, warmth, and human connection. To Eastwood, those films represented a time when Hollywood was less consumed by ideological signaling and more focused on craft. What troubles Eastwood, however, is what he sees as a transformation, not just in Reiner, but in the culture around him. Somewhere along the line, the business stopped being about curiosity, Eastwood reflects. It became about certainty, and certainty is dangerous in art. In Eastwood's view, Reiner has become emblematic of a Hollywood class that no longer tolerates disagreement, mistaking moral conviction for moral superiority. Eastwood contrasts this with his own approach to film and public life. "I never believed my job was to tell people what to think," he says. "My job was to show people who they are." He explains that his films, even the controversial ones, were never meant to lecture audiences, but to provoke thought. Whether directing westerns, war films, or intimate character studies, Eastwood says he trusted viewers to draw their own conclusions. According to Eastwood, the real divide between himself and Reiner is not political, but philosophical. "Rob wants to win arguments," Eastwood says. "I want to ask questions." He argues that Hollywood once thrived on creative friction, where artists with wildly different worldviews collaborated without demanding ideological conformity. Today, Eastwood believes that spirit has eroded. "There was a time when you could disagree and still respect each other," Eastwood recalls. "Now, disagreement is treated like a moral failure." He suggests that Reiner's outspoken activism reflects a broader trend in which entertainers mistake volume for virtue. To Eastwood, moral certainty closes doors that storytelling should leave open. Eastwood is careful not to frame himself as a victim. "Nobody's silencing me," he says. "I've had my say." What concerns him is the younger generation of filmmakers who feel pressured to align with approved opinions. "They're scared, to be honest," he says, "and fear has never made good art." When asked whether he thinks Reiner understands this criticism, Eastwood pauses. "I don't know," he admits. "People hear what they want to hear." He emphasizes that his remarks are not personal attacks, but reflections on a system that rewards outrage over insight. "Rob didn't create that system," Eastwood says, "but he's comfortable inside it." At 95, Eastwood expresses no desire to settle scores. His tone is calm, almost detached. "Life's too short for grudges," he says. What remains important to him is legacy, not awards or box office numbers, but the freedom to tell stories honestly. "I'd rather make a movie that makes people uncomfortable than one that tells them they're perfect." In the end, Eastwood's truth about Rob Reiner is not a revelation, but a lament. It is the sorrow of an artist watching an industry trade curiosity for conformity. "Hollywood used to be a place where outsiders belonged," Eastwood says. "Now it's a place where everyone's trying to prove they're on the inside." For Clint Eastwood, that change matters far more than any single name.